You've spent years trying to become less of who you naturally are. You tell yourself you're too distracted, too unfocused, too interested in too many different things. One month it's photography, then it's psychology, then it's business, then it's cooking, then it's writing. Eventually you start asking the question that almost always leads you in the wrong direction. Which one should I give up? That question sounds practical, but sometimes it's the very thing keeping you from discovering what you're actually meant to build. Because the relationship between your interests usually isn't obvious while you're living it. It's something you recognize later, not while you're trying to make sense of everything, just while you're out there living. One of filmmaker Edgar Wright's most interesting observations isn't about filmmaking itself. He's talked about how all of his different interests, music, comedy, horror, eventually found their place inside his filmmaking. They weren't competing with each other. They were preparing him for something he couldn't have built if he'd specialized too early. Watch one of his films, and it's hard to separate those influences. The rhythm often feels musical. The visual jokes land with perfect comedic timing. The suspense borrows from horror. The editing becomes part of the storytelling instead of simply connecting scenes. Once the story is finished, everything seems obvious. While it's happening, almost nothing does. That's usually how these things work. You rarely get to experience the finished version before living through the confusing one. And that's usually where people quit. There's an invisible pressure on you to become one thing. Schools ask it. Job applications ask it. Networking events ask it. So, what do you do? It's a simple question, but it quietly teaches you that your identity should fit into one sentence. Real life rarely works that way. You're not one thing. You're a collection of experiences, a collection of conversations, a collection of curiosities that have been accumulating for years without you noticing the pattern. The problem isn't that you have too many interests. The problem is expecting the pattern to reveal itself before enough pieces exist. 1,000-piece puzzle looks like chaos after the first 50 pieces. That doesn't mean there's no picture. It simply means it isn't visible yet. There's another trap hidden inside this. You assume every interest has to become a career, but interests don't all have the same job. Some earn money, some restore energy, some sharpen skills without any fanfare around it. Reading history might improve your storytelling. Learning photography changes how you notice light. Cooking teaches experimentation. Playing music develops rhythm. Travel develops observation. While it's happening, none of it looks connected. Only later do you realize you weren't collecting hobbies. You were collecting tools. Not every interest needs to pay the bills. Some quietly improve the person you'll eventually become. That's a very different way to think about curiosity, and it changes something else too. It changes the way you think about progress. It's interesting how often you might describe yourself as behind, usually because someone else appears more focused. Someone else picked a lane years ago. Someone else became known for one thing. But appearances can be misleading. Sometimes what looks like focus is simply visibility. No one sees all the interests that were explored before arriving there. The failed experiments, the abandoned projects, the books that were read, the conversations that shifted thinking. People admired the finished building. They rarely noticed the thousands of bricks underneath it. People tend to think confidence comes from certainty, but it often comes from accumulated experience. Confidence often arrives after enough disconnected experiences finally introduce themselves to each other. There's another possibility that's easy to overlook. You may be misreading yourself. Sometimes the thing you call inconsistency is actually integration, waiting to happen. The most interesting work often happens where 2 or 3 worlds collide. That's where originality tends to live. Not because you tried to be unique, because no one else happened to combine those particular experiences in exactly that way. Originality is often less about inventing something new than arranging familiar things in a combination only you could have assembled. So that changes the question. Instead of asking which interest should win, the better question becomes, what happens if none of them lose? Of course, this doesn't mean saying yes to everything forever. Choosing still matters. Focus still matters. Projects eventually need deadlines. Skills eventually need repetition. But choosing where to aim isn't the same as pretending the rest of who you are no longer matters. The roots remain even when only one branch is growing. And sometimes that branch only survives because the roots kept expanding underground long before anyone noticed. That's what Edgar Wright's story quietly points toward. His interests didn't compete, they collaborated, just not all at once, which suggests another possibility. Perhaps your frustration isn't coming from having too many interests. Perhaps it's coming from demanding they explain themselves too early. Some things reveal their purpose only after enough time has passed for the connections to become visible. Until then, your curiosity can feel random, unfocused, like a distraction. But history is full of people whose greatest strength wasn't choosing one perfect interest. It was allowing enough different pieces of themselves to remain alive long enough to eventually recognize each other. The picture only becomes clearer after they stop trying to force it. So instead of asking which part of yourself should disappear, maybe you're asking the wrong question. Maybe the right question is, which part have you been treating like a distraction that might actually be part of the design? If you'd like to keep exploring conversations like these, every week inside my school community, we take one personal development idea and actually live with it for a week. We compare notes, discover what worked, what surprised us, and what none of us would have seen on our own. You'll find the link to join us in the video description. And before you go, please share this video with someone who's been having the same conversation with themselves. I'll see you in the next one.